In this video, we're going to talk about trunk versus access ports on Cisco switches and look at the differences between the two types of ports. Now, this video is just one of many in the GNS3 labs for the CCNA certification series. So if that interests you, you should subscribe and check out the rest of the videos in this playlist as well. And I decided to put in a few videos on trunk and access ports before we got into the spanning tree section, just to make sure that we had these foundational concepts covered. On this video, we're going to look at the differences between trunk ports and access ports, and then we're going to go through some basic configuration examples and do a brief demonstration on GNS3. Trunk and access ports interact differently with VLANs. For access ports, each port can only be a part of one VLAN, and the lone exception to this is the voice VLAN, where there actually can be two VLANs allowed on the access port. And then with trunk ports, each trunk port can carry more than one VLAN on the same port at once. The next thing we're going to look at here is VLAN tagging. Access ports have a single untagged VLAN on the port, and the tags are actually removed as the traffic enters that port and goes to the end device. Trunk ports, on the other hand, use multiple tagged VLANs, and tagging just means that it inserts a value into the header of the frames that it's forwarding that distinguishes between the VLANs. So as these frames enter the port, the tags are added. Whereas with access ports, since there's only one VLAN allowed on the port, the tags aren't necessary. And the two types of ports are used differently. Access ports are used to connect to end devices, like PCs, IP phones, printers, faxes. And the lone exception to this is that you can actually configure access ports to work between switches, but there really is no reason to do this. You would want to use a trunk port for that, even though it will forward traffic. And trunk ports are typically used to connect to other networking devices, as in switch to switch, hypervisor to switch. You can connect a switch to a router with a trunk port, and switch to server as well. And concerning the native VLAN, with access ports, you can only have that one VLAN on the access port. Assuming that you leave the native VLAN as VLAN 1, you can put access ports into VLAN 1, but this really is not best practice. Best practice is to leave VLAN 1 on its own and then assign the access ports to VLANs other than the native VLAN. And then trunk ports allow for multiple tagged VLANs, and the native VLAN is carried by trunk ports automatically and is untagged, whereas the rest of the VLANs that the trunk port carries are tagged. And then the protocols for the two types of ports: the access ports use the IE 802.1q for mode access, which has the tagging difference when compared to the trunk ports. Trunk ports can also use 802.1q with mode trunk, of course tags differently than the access ports. And there's also inter-switch link, which is a Cisco proprietary trunking protocol, which means that it will only work with other Cisco switches. And if you're going to be using third-party switches, you would want to make sure to use the 802.1q for trunking. And really also just note that the only reason that I'm bringing up inter-switch link, the Cisco proprietary protocol, is because it's there. In all of my experience, I've seen 802.1q trunking, and that includes all of the labbing and CCIE study as well, all uses 802.1q. And then with respect to the voice VLAN feature, it's a feature that allows both the voice and data VLAN to go to the phone, and then the phone basically has a built-in switch, and it switches the data VLAN that goes to the PC attached to it. Phone plugs directly into the wall, and then there's another Ethernet plug in the back of the phone that you then put to the PC. And it works just because there is a little tiny switch built into the back of the phone. And so that's a concept that really only applies to the access ports, because to trunk ports, the voice VLAN just looks like another VLAN, and there's no configuration or anything like that that's necessary for trunk ports. To them, it just looks like it's another VLAN. All right, here we have just basic configuration for both access and for the trunk ports. These are really the only commands that you would need to get both an access port up and running and a trunk port up and running. For the access port, you just need to declare it switchport mode access. This makes it an access port. And then switchport access VLAN 10 assigns that port to VLAN 10. And then for the trunk port, the first command that you want to execute is going to be the switchport trunk encapsulation.1q, and you have to do that actually before putting in switchport mode trunk. So you specify the protocol, and then you declare mode trunk, and then switchport trunk allowed VLAN 10 explicitly allows VLAN 10 along that trunk. With that command, you can list many VLANs, or you can put in all to allow all VLANs. Now I have GNS3 and my configuration pulled up, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create two switches from scratch. I'm going to assign a host name. I'm going to put VLAN 10 in the database, and then we're just going to configure some access ports and some trunk ports and get some basic functionality going. I'm going to power on the devices and open up the consoles. Alright, so now the devices have booted up, and I'm just going to start pasting in my configuration. And I am going to put this configuration in the description, so if you want to follow along, I'll be commands down there. And I had a mistake in one of the commands that I have here. I forgot to put the trunk between switchport and end cap in order to declare the encapsulation protocol. And I'm just going to assign an IP address to the interface on VLAN 10 on each of the switches so we can do basic ping testing. Okay, so now we're just going to do the verification. So I'm going to do show VLAN brief on switch 1. And this shows us that VLAN 10 is created and it is active on gig 00 as an access port. Put it in switch 2 as well. And we have the same results. Show interface trunk, which is actually show interfaces trunk. So we do have trunking configured, and it tells us that we have the encapsulation of 802.1q right there. And then it shows us the ports that we have trunking for VLAN 10 on. Do show interfaces trunk on switch 2. And we have the same result there as well. When the trunking is working, we should be able to ping the IP address. Alright, and our ping failed, and that is actually our own IP address as well on this switch, so that can only be because the interface of VLAN 10 is probably in the down state. So do show IP interface brief will show us that it is indeed down, so we'll go interface VLAN 10, no shut. Interface VLAN 10, no shut on switch 2 as well. Okay, and now we can ping our own IP address and the IP address on the other switch. And then we can also do that as well on switch 2. And then just one more thing. What we are going to do is just demonstrate that you can, in fact, use access ports between the switches, even though you wouldn't really want to do this in the real world. So we're going to default our trunk link, which is going to take that down because it's going to return these interfaces to the default configuration. Make sure that we're in that one. And then we're going to put the access commands in there and make them access ports. All right. And so now they are access ports, and these are the ports that we can see. All right. So gig 01 is the ports that we have connected to each other. They're the only thing that is connecting. And let's see if our pings still succeed here. All right, so that's pinging itself, which of course will succeed. And we have a ping failure. So now we get to troubleshoot. All right, and so now we have success because we no-shut the access ports that were in VLAN 10. All right, and so this shows you that you can have access ports connected to each other, and you will be able to allow traffic for that one VLAN between switches. However, you do not want to do this in the real world. And that's going to conclude this video. So in this video, we went through all of the differences between trunk ports and access ports, and then we did some basic labs at the end and applied the basic configurations. If you found this helpful, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.